Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast, part of the Reco12 family of recovery resources for people suffering from all addictions, all afflictions. We are an online resource for those who may have recovered through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you'll find shares there from people in AA, OA, GA, workaholics, Al-Anons, codependents, and you may feel free to add any to the list if you will. We have a bunch of shares on there, and surely you'll hear from someone that you relate to. We meet live here every Friday at 8 a.m. UK time. I think that's 8 a.m. GMT, plus 2 here for Israel. However, our recordings are live at Reco12.com. You could listen. You could also find the flagship Reco12 podcast there. That's Justin B. You could find Noodle It Out with Nikki and several other fantastic pop-up meetings and deep dives into the Big Book's wonderful work, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And again, fellows who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, whatever substance or person or behavior that was baffling them. We do have costs to cover the Zoom and technical stuff here that's well over my head. Justin is the mastermind of all that. And if you'd like to contribute a seventh tradition, every little bit helps. You could do that at Reco12.com/support. And we do accept PayPal and Venmo. Beyond that, I'm always looking for speakers here. So if you'd like to share your recovery story and shed some light in the world, maybe save the drowning man who is dying, or if you have a sponsee who you think should share, I'm going to put my number in the chat. I'd love to hear from them. I'd love to hear from you. If you've got topics that you feel, the sponsoring addict, the newcomer, etc., please reach out to me. We're always looking for new speakers across all addictions and all afflictions. Without further ado, it is my honor and my privilege to bring to you MJ. MJ, welcome. We're going to have you share your experience, strength, and hope for about 30 minutes. I'm not so tough on time. So, just share from your heart. I could give you a little bit of a warning, and then we'll take Q&A. People on the line, you could either pop your questions in the chat, or if you'd really like to unmute and go ahead and ask MJ your questions, we can do that as well. MJ is going to talk today about her topic, which is emotional sobriety. And who can't use some of that? I probably need this share more than anyone else on the line. So I'm here, and I'm glad that you are too. And if you're listening to recording, we know this meeting has shelf life. I'll put my number in the chat. MJ, you should also go ahead and put your number on the chat before we get started so people could reach out to you direct. And buckle up before MJ begins. Maybe we'll just take a moment in silence, keeping in our hearts and our minds the addicts who are still suffering, holding the space for them and praying that they may recover as we have. One more last thing before MJ begins. Let's just go ahead and say the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to accept the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay, MJ, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is MJ, and today I'm very grateful.
When you come in inside, I believe that they know what to say for our life. I text back with God.
Hey, Kelly. Good morning. My name is MJ, and I'm a very grateful recovered addict. Thanks ever so much for having me this morning, Karen. I do like to start my shares with saying a set-aside prayer just to get me out of the way, because nothing ever comes out when it's just MJ in the way. So just give me a sec, you guys. God, today please help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself and everybody else, everything I think I know about my own recovery, the 12 steps, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have an open mind and a new experience of all these things. Please help me see the truth. Amen. Thanks for the introduction, Karen, and thanks for mentioning that this is a podcast for all addictions and all afflictions. I certainly fit that bill, you know. I mean, yeah, I did like the drink and the drugs, you know, but I found that when I put that down, that anything to change the way that I felt was good. You know, food, the gym, relationships, anything. And I was never, ever happy in my own skin. You know, the truth is that the drink and the drugs were brought me to my knees. And they are the reason that I came to these fellowships. You know, Cocaine Anonymous is my home fellowship. And that's what I thought my problem was, you know. At the very end of my using, I found myself lonely, on my own, in a one-bedroom flat. And even worse than that, you know, I was on a mattress on the floor in said one-bedroom flat with no other furniture, not even curtains at my window. Smoking a crack pipe, you guys. You know, that's how lonely my life was. I hear a lot of people say that they lost everything in their addiction. My truth is that I gave it all away. You know, I gave it all away as a result of choosing a power, a king that was more powerful. You know, whether that was drink, drugs, food, and I came into recovery, and I thought that just putting the drink and the drugs down would be enough. You know, one of my favourite lines in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is on page 82, where it says, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Hello? I've put the drink and the drugs down, you guys. Why are things not getting better? You know, is that not enough? And for a little while it was, you know, for a little while it was. I got sober in the physical rooms, and the beautiful thing is that we have a fellowship around us that kind of holds us, keeps us safe and protected, and that's what it did for a little while, you know. I was going to the meetings, you know, I was going out with you guys, having meals at the weekends, you know, things started to get better. I started to get some friends, and it was pretty good, you know, but it wasn't sustainable. Because when I left the meetings, when I left you guys, when you weren't around anymore, I was still left with me on my own, with those thoughts and feelings running through my mind, not really knowing what to do about them. And something happened to me about 18 months ago. I suffered a psychotic break sober. And that led me to move from London up to Lincolnshire, which is where my mum is, and where my children were, because the truth was I couldn't take care of my children. You know, they had to come and live with my mum. You know, and they'd lived with my mum for quite some time, for about 8 years or so. And came to live up here. And I knew that you guys had something. I knew, regardless of the way that I felt, regardless of the pain that I was still feeling as a result of not really getting this stuff, I knew that you guys had something. So I had that teeny tiny mustard seed of faith that that's where I needed to be. And regardless of the fact that there wasn't a face-to-face meeting anywhere nearby, I came onto Zoom. And that's where things started to really change for me. You know, I did digress. I became that girl again, much like in the face-to-face, where I sort of turned my camera off. I was incognito, didn't really want to see anybody. It reminded me of when I went into the physical rooms the first time with the hood up, sat at the back, not really wanting to integrate with anybody. That was me all over again. But what I did is I started to listen. I started to watch people. And I started to understand that in order to get what these people had online, I had to do what they do. So it's all very good talking a good talk, but it's about walking the walk, And that's what I do today. I let my recovery speak louder than my addiction. That's the truth. And I found a sponsor. And boys, recovery speaks louder than his addiction. He's a man that knows what he's doing, all right. And first time I asked him to sponsor me, he said no. I was devastated. But why not? So I waited, and about another 4 weeks or so went past, and I asked him again. Second time he said yes. I'm so grateful. I'm going to put him on a pedestal because he has helped change my life. But he isn't my God. I thought he was to begin with. But yeah, I'm gonna do everything you do. I'm going to stick close to you and everything will be good. But the difference is that he didn't just show me what he did. He put my hand in that of God's, in that of my higher power. He showed me where to find it and how I could go about my business when I wasn't with him and I wasn't with you on the meetings. Wow. Now, that's what I needed. Because it was grand. The wind had stopped blowing. I wasn't drinking or using anymore. But I was still in a lot of emotional pain. Still couldn't deal with those emotions that had kept me drinking and drugging for all of them years. And what was it that I needed? I needed a power greater than me. I used to give everything else in my life the power. I used to give people power over my emotions. I used to let them dictate how they felt to then make me feel. I used to let things dictate how I felt. And what I started to learn is that there's actually a power inside of me that can dictate the way I feel. I've just got to let it out. That's all I've got to do. Who knew? There's lots of different quotes in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm gonna talk about a few of them. One of my favourites is on page 59. It says, "Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now." Now.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
It's urgent, MJ. You need to find it now. That's what my sponsor said. And in my step 2, I came to believe that there was something bigger and better than me that could restore me to sanity. What is insanity? Well, there's two ways of looking at insanity. Insanity is doing the same thing again and again and again, expecting a different result. Or, even better than that, it's doing the same thing again and again and again, knowing what the outcome's going to be. And that was me on both counts. And in my step 2, I started to create this God, this higher power. And what did I want it to be? It's a bit like a Build-A-Bear, you guys. I want it to be loving, kind, considerate, compassionate, all of the nice things. And I did ask for a sense of humour too, because that's really important to me. Life's about enjoying and having fun. And so when I was looking at sorry, you guys, was that me? I have got to be loving, kind. And I've really started to understand that this was down to me. This wasn't down to my sponsor. This wasn't down to you guys in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, or any other anonymous fellowship to make me feel good. It was down to me. And that power within inside of me. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells us that the fundamental idea of God is inside each and every man, woman, and child. Just have to let it out. And then when I get to start to explore this stuff, there's so many quotes, but I'm only going to talk about a few. Otherwise, I'll be here all day. I could talk about this stuff for ages. But one of them is on page 55, and it says, "We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there." Now, he was there. And the truth is that I was loving, kind, compassionate, and all of those things. At times during my drinking and using. My step 4 told me who I wasn't. When I did it first time round with my first sponsor, I was of the understanding that that's what I was. I was all of those horrible, nasty things. But this time around, my sponsor pointed out to me, MJ, that's all the things that you're not. That's all of the self-will run riot, the bondage of self that you display as a result of your illness. The feeling we have for a friend. I would always treat everybody else really well, but I would be so hard on myself. I put people on a pedestal. But today, and that line in particular reminds me that I need to be as kind and as compassionate to me as I would a friend. Don't beat myself up. Don't be hard on myself. Because I am loving, kind, compassionate, and all the things. It says he was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It's only there with me. I can't rely on anybody else. Not my sponsor, not the meetings. It's in me. When this shift started to happen in me, it was quite profound. For that period of time that I was in the physical rooms and I was sober, things were really tough, and I really struggled, but I don't know how. I'll do it. It was good, but I was holding on by my fingernails. But when I started to work with my sponsor, my most current sponsor, things really did start to happen pretty quickly. I'm not afraid of the word God anymore. When I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, whatever anonymous fellowship it is that you're in, I looked on the wall and I saw that word God and I thought, oh, jeez, I'm out of here, you guys. But one thing I will say is don't be afraid of that word God. It might rush you out of them doors, but the drink, the drugs, the food, the sex, the whatever your vice is will bring you straight back in here if you're anything like me. I have to constantly be in God's will. That's why I say the set aside prayer before I share. Because it's not about me anymore. It's not about those old programmings that I've got, those old ideas that didn't serve me. I had loads of them. And where did I get them all from? I got them from society. I got them from education. I got them from my family. I got them from my friends. I got them from all of these places. And it was like I had different programming for different places. And I would go to my family and forget that I'm not at work and I'd have to change those ideas, or I'd go to work and forget I'm not at school anymore and I'd have to change them ideas. Whereas today, I've just got one set. It's not confusing anymore. That set is God-centered, my God-centered, right? Because I get to come up with my own conception. That's the beauty of this stuff. Doesn't have to be anybody else's. It's mine. It's in me. Page 57 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, when we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. When I get close to God, when I sit in prayer and meditation, God gives me all the answers. Everything that I need is with him. Your conception of God can be anything, you guys. Power, source, love, universe. Doesn't matter. The words are relevant. Just needs to be bigger and better than you.
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the Big Book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
I still thought that I could do it my way. I still thought that I could manipulate situations because I'm sober. Hello. The wind stopped blowing, you guys. I'm not drinking and using. So surely my decisions are good now, right? Can you not see that? you know, but that's not my truth. You know, I was still making really bad decisions. I was still making really poor decisions that put me in a place to be hurt. You know, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that my troubles are of my own making. Step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. That was me, sober. You know, everything that I did before I found God, before I found a power greater than myself, was my will, was what I wanted. Today I know that my job on this earth is to be God's agent. I am merely an employee. And for me, it's even more than that. You know, I am merely an extra in this movie. You know, I'm fetching the teas and coffees. You know, I'm not even really playing a role. I've just been assigned to do something. You know, and I'm fully qualified to do what I've been assigned to do, and that's it. Nothing else. Not my own little ideas and plans. You know, because they don't serve me well. In actual fact, they get me in a whole host of trouble. You know, and my sponsor said to me, MJ, who are you? And this went on for a few days, this. And I said, I'm MJ. He said, no, that's your name. Who are you? I said, well, I'm a mum. He said, no, it's one of your roles. Who are you, MJ? Like I said, this was like a few days because he wouldn't give me any clues, which was really frustrating. In the end, I realised that I'm a child of God. That's who I am. My job on this earth is to look after my fellow brothers and sisters. You know, I am uniquely qualified to help my fellow man, my fellow addict and alcoholic. My book tells me that I can help where no one else can. So that's what I do today. You know, I'm fully immersed in this stuff. Fully immersed. You know, I work with a great deal of men and women. Because I sponsor addicts and alcoholics, you guys. I don't sponsor just women. Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't tell me that I need to just sponsor women. You know, if you identify as an addict or an alcoholic, and I've got the time, then I'll sponsor you. That's it. You know, and I know today that it's not just about taking somebody through the 12 steps. My job is to put their hand in that of God's, to help them find that connection that they need in order to live their life successfully. That connection that I didn't have for that period of time before I came on scene. See, I understand how painful that is, not having that connection. I've been through that. And if I can help people not feel that pain, the satisfaction that I get as a byproduct of that is immense. You know, people talk about living a life beyond their wildest dreams, you know, with all the things, the car, the house, the bed. It's not important to me, that stuff. You know, the truth is that I'm not in control of any of it. Fact of the matter is, I'm being evicted from my house at the minute. I'm due to leave. Well, my date to leave is the 3rd of November, and I don't know where I'm going to be. But it's none of my business. So I handed all of that over to God, and He's in charge now. You know, and as a result of that, I'm so free. I don't have to dwell on the past anymore because that makes me depressed. You know, I can't change any of it. You know, I don't have to think into the future. That makes me anxious. There's nothing I can do about what's coming. I have to live in the right here, right now. And finally, page 53 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? What was my choice to be? Well, at first, it was, he can be what he can be when he's working well for me, and I'll take the rest. But that led me into pain and suffering and misery. Today, God is everything. I have to shrink MJ and grow God. That's the truth. And as a result of that, I do have all the things. Those two girls that weren't with me for 8 years are massive parts of my life. My 20-year-old daughter has just got engaged. She went to Paris for her 20th birthday, and her boyfriend asked her to marry him. My 15-year-old daughter goes to a specialist horse academy. She's just been offered an apprenticeship with a top racing yard in the UK. She's doing so well. But my own selfish ideals wanted to stop all that, because ain't it glad the wind stopped blowing, you guys? Come back to mummy. I've got a relationship with my mum, with my family. I don't put my reliance on them. They don't have the power to change the way that I feel. There's a power inside of me. That's the only one that matters today. Because my choice is that God is everything. God is. If anybody is struggling with a connection to God's high power, I've put my number in the chat. Please reach out. We don't do this alone. This is a fellowship where we help each other. But our role is to find God, and to live from the power that is deep down within each and every one of us. Karen, thank you so much for inviting me this morning. I think I've done about 30 minutes. I could go on for ages, but I will leave it there. My name is MJ, and today I'm a very grateful recovered addict.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support, or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
Thank you, MJ. Can you guys hear me okay here? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing about your story about giving away everything, and how many of us do that. Just no gratitude, so mired in self that we just give away all these gifts, whether it's our parents, our children, our money, our homes, our comforts, giving away everything for your substances, and being brought to your knees, coming to meetings with the hoodie over your head. You shared about coming in, beaten up, asking someone to be a sponsor, getting turned away, asking again, having someone extend you their hand, and then having to make sure you don't turn them into your higher power, getting walked through the steps, experience what it was to have someone put your hand in higher power's hand, working with others, helping people, learning to rely on him, learning that higher power is everything. And then today, working with others, helping others connect to a power greater than themselves, helping others recover. Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful story and personal share. If anyone has questions, I'm going to ask you to type them into the chat right now. If you'd rather unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question, you could do that as well.
Hi.
I've got a couple of questions. Go ahead. Fabulous. Go ahead.
Thank you, everybody, for making the meeting. Michelle Addict. MJ, thank you so much for that. Emotional sobriety. I do have a question for you. I mean, I say emotional sobriety like that because it's, it's part of, I just wanted to get clean from alcohol and cocaine, and I thought that was the problem, but the problem is definitely me. And the emotional sobriety part, I'm beginning to connect with more and more. I just wanted to know, is your God the same God as it was before you met your new sponsor? And if not, what changed in your spiritual life? Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Good question. No, is the answer to that. When I first came in, I was selfish about God, you know. I used to pray in the dark, when I was drinking and using. It was, oh, God help me and poor me, and he was never there. And I had this conception of what God was, and it wasn't very nice, So I was prejudiced, and I thought God would only work if I behaved myself or if I was doing all the good things. I didn't think that I was worthy of that at first. But my new sponsor taught me that God hasn't had to have my permission to be working in my life. He's been there the whole time. The truth is that I wouldn't be alive with the way that I conducted myself during my drinking and using if there wasn't a God. And much like I explained, Michelle, I had to really go inside of me. That's what I had to do. I had to really think about all of those qualities that I wanted God to be. And I guess I kind of wanted those qualities in the beginning, but I didn't really understand. I wanted kindness, loving, all of the nice things. But what I thought is that they would just be given, that I would just get them. If I just did a little bit of prayer and a little bit of meditation, that these things would kind of come by osmosis. And that's not my truth. My truth is, excuse me, that I get all of those things as a result of putting all of those things in. What I put into the world is what I get back. So if I want loving, kindness, sympathy, I've got to give it out. I do a lot of reading of spiritual literature, and I do a little study with a group of women, and I love it, because we look at all of this sort of stuff, and it's so true, everything that I manifest comes back. Everything, from the way that I wake up in the morning, how I start my day, and then how I continue throughout my day. On awakening in a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is key for me. And what does it say? I don't like to think about what it says. I like to say what it says. It says, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Right. And so I consider my plans, right? And that's all very good and well. But what I know today is that I have to do God's work first and my plans are secondary. Yeah. So I might consider my plans, but ultimately what's going to happen is going to happen, you know? And it says here as well that our thought life we place on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives, right? And what are wrong motives? Me thinking of me. Yeah, so every day when I wake up, I have to think not what I want and not what I can get out of the world, but what I can give to the world. You know, that is me manifesting what I want my God to be in the morning. You know, and so I do go about my day thinking about who I can help, what I can do, what I can pack into the stream of life, it says, doesn't it, in a big book? What can I pack into the stream of life today? Now, my sponsor says something beautiful. He says, I lay down in the river of life and let it flow. Yeah, that's what I do. You know, I used to go to boarding school and I used to canoe at boarding school. I don't know if you've ever canoed, guys, but if you fight it, right, you're going to capsize. Yeah, you're gonna end up under the water. You know, and that's so true for me today in sobriety and with this higher power God stuff. You know, if I fight it, if I try and do it my way with my plans, I capsize. You know, and I don't have emotional sobriety. You know, I get what I put in. I hope that's answered your question.
Hi, my name is Hannah Amadix. I haven't got a question, I just wanted to connect to the meeting. Thank you for such a beautiful share this morning. I had quite a bad night's sleep, so I woke up tired, and obviously I had to not get in my head and pray and get rid of myself. And then I wanted to connect to the meeting, and then I thought, in my head, I've got no makeup on, I can't show my face. And I thought, no, Hannah, it doesn't matter. It's about connecting with other people. So excuse the state of me. This is me, Bear. But I just want to say how special you are to me, MJ, and the connection that I've been able to get, and it's growing into a beautiful friendship. You've helped me when I've needed you. You've taken my calls, and that is so important to me because that's what I want to be able to give other people. And it's about helping others, and it's not about me today. It's not about what I want. It's about how I can help others. I will always take people's calls. I've got 2 sponsees at the moment that I'm going through the work, and my recovery is just coming on. Since I've connected with my God and really, really given myself and my life to Him, my recovery's just gone on another level, and I can feel it in my spirit. And that's what I feel when I hear you speak. I feel it in my soul, and that's just such a beautiful thing. So thank you so much, and thank you, ladies, for this meeting. I'm really, really grateful this morning.
Thank you for coming in and saying that, Hannah. Would anyone else like to come in and ask a question? Clearly, MJ has a lot of experience working with others, sponsoring, living in 10, 11, and 12. I invite you to ask her about her experience. And if no one chimes in, MJ, just go ahead and speak about those 2 topics, one after the other, you know, working with others, how you work with others, how many people, what you find effective, how you kind of improve that skill. And then if we have some more time, you could talk about living in 10, 11, and 12. You did speak about your meditation chair.
Lisa's got a question, Karen. Or not, but she's got her hand up.
Okay.
Hi guys, Lisa, alcoholic addict. Thanks, MJ. You are so. I agree with Hannah. You're so powerful. I was like you. Where you're programmed, and someone said the other day, and I thought that's so true. I didn't have a problem with God. I had a problem with everybody else's God, because it was all what people had told me what I should be believing, and I was confused. And then I got more confused because as I grew up, I was thinking like I'm praying to this man with the white cloak on and stuff, out there, so, up there somewhere. So then when the realization come that it was deep down inside, it was like, whoa, like it takes it to another level. Like once I realized it's within, it changes it completely. But what I was going to ask you, MJ, is how do you deal with responses when they really are like so blocked from God, a higher power, and because like you say, it's the big book and God. That's all we can rely on for this program. And when they're so blocked from it, how do you sort of not break them down, but like try and encourage to seek it?
Thanks, Lisa. So when we go through the inventory process, when we do our step 4, what do we come up with? We come up with a sane sex ideal, don't we? And how we want to behave. Now, our step 4 should be the smashing of all of that old behaviour, and the coming to the realisation that that's not serving me anymore. And for me, that process, I missed that first time around, that sane sex ideal. I didn't even do one. I didn't even know it was in there. Right? I just thought, oh yeah, just dump all my stuff. That's it. I'm happy. Let's move on. And it wasn't until I worked with my most current sponsor that he pointed out to me that I have to adapt and create a sane sex ideal, which, for those of you that might not know, means a relationship ideal, period. It's not just about the way that I can conduct myself sexually, because it's about my sexual powers, right? It's about the way that I can manipulate and I can control and do all of the things, like I might say something to somebody just to get them to do what I want, that's my sexual powers. And for me, it's about making them see that the way that I was behaving with all of those old ideas doesn't work. And if I want to create that sane sex ideal, that sane relationship ideal, I can't do that. And then I'll go back to that step 2 and that coming to believe that there's something bigger and better than me. And initially that did come from you guys. I could see it in you, right? And I could see that you were all living lives that were exponentially better than that I was living. But then little by slowly, I came to the realization, like you said, that deep down in me is all of those things, that loving kindness, and it is about that manifestation of doing for others what I want to receive myself, and I can't do that. That isn't me. My default setting is selfish, self-centered. I want what I want all of the time, and sometimes it is not necessarily for me going through the steps, but leading sponsors to specific parts of the book that talk about God, that talk about him being everything or nothing, that talk about the fact that without help it's too much for us, all of them things, For me, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous it's like a love story, Lisa, it just flows and ebbs around, and you can dance around them pages beautifully. When I first did it, I thought, oh yeah, I'm just reading a book, going through the steps 1, 2, 3 to 12. But today what I realise is that I can go anywhere in this book and flow anywhere around it to get the answers that I need. I do stick with the first 164 because they are our program. The personal stories are great, but that's not where the solution is. The solution is in the first 164 pages. But I can flow from from all different pages with all of the different steps. You know, it's not just about one chapter is step one, and then one chapter is step two,
Mhm.
you know, which is what I thought to begin with. I did, you know, I thought that as I went through, right, okay, that's step one. But when you really read this stuff and you start to really take it in, you can see that they're littered everywhere. Everywhere. And it's about leaning on the fellowship and finding the answers you need to when you don't know. You know, that's the beauty of this stuff, isn't it? You know, that we do have a fellowship. We do have people that have walked before us, you know, and that know this stuff. And so for me, it's about constantly seeking the information that is in this book. You know, this book has all of my answers, Lisa. You know, and it's really important for a sponsee to get that as well. I think I've answered the question.
Thank you, Angelica. Beautifully answered, as always. Thank you, love.
No worries, love. Anybody else? And then I'll talk about step 12, I guess. No? Okay, me again.
I'd actually like you to speak about your daily practice, if you don't mind. I think that might be helpful to some people on the line.
Okay, daily practice. So we've all got a mobile phone, right? And they rule our lives these days, don't they? Our mobile phones. You know, I've got an Apple Watch, I've got AirPods, I've got phone, I've got it all going on. You know, and in my early recovery, those things were still really important to me. You know, and but today, when I wake up in the morning, I don't reach for my phone. I have to pray. You know, and I have to think about a few things. I have to think about my sane and sex idea always comes up in the morning. You know, and what I'm going to be today. You know, am I going to put love into this world? Or am I going to think about me and what I want? You know, I have to divorce my thinking every single morning, you know, before I do anything. You know, the book says upon awakening, you know, not when I've got out of bed and gone and got a cup of tea, looked at my phone, had a vape and all the rest of it, but on awakening, immediately that I open my eyes. Yeah, because for me, that's when I'm in a kind of semi-conscious state as well. So that's a really good time to get with God, you know, because I'm still not quite awake. You know, and after that, I do go and have my cup of tea and my vape. But then, before I pick up my phone, I've got a lovely chair which is just behind me in my dining room that overlooks my garden. I let my dog out and I meditate. The meditation was quite hard for me when I first came in. You know, I thought, oh, geez, I'm going to have to sit here in silence, you know, and or maybe even listen to a guided meditation of some, I don't know, man, woman, breathe, MJ, and all the rest of it. So that it's not like that, you know. I mean, my breath's really important, but my breath's always there. You know, I need my breath to live. You know, so I do just sit quietly and focus on what I'm breathing in and what I'm breathing out. And what am I breathing in? I'm breathing in the universe to breathe out. What am I breathing out? I'm breathing out love. I'm breathing out kindness. And that's then what I take into my day. You know, strangely enough, I had a conversation with someone on air about her new sponsor, who is my sponsee's sister, my soul sister. We've got some really cute nicknames. We're called Yin and Yang. And she was talking to her about meditation because she'd struggled with it, and it's about finding your happy place, right? It's about finding that sweet spot, that spot where you're so relaxed and in tune with peace, harmony. And I have to do that every morning. If I don't, if I rush it, and if I go about my business, my head goes, and it's, oh, what am I going to do today? Oh, I need to do this today. And, oh, I need to do that today. And when I've got that attitude, things don't go well for me. They really don't. So it is about what I can pack into the stream of life today. It is about God's plan first and foremost, and then what I want second. I'm quite fortunate to work from home. So depending on what my work schedule is like, I usually work with a sponsee first thing in the morning, and one in the evening, every weekday. I can't be selfish. I can't keep this stuff to myself. A lot of people in these rooms say, in order to keep it, I've got to give it away. That's not my truth. My truth is, in order to get it, I've got to give it away. I don't get this stuff unless I'm giving it away. That would be selfish of me. And being selfish doesn't serve me anymore. So I work with others. I've just recently taken on a new commitment at a new online area as the H&I committee chair. And we've got some really exciting stuff going on there. Some really exciting stuff. What it's about for me is lifting people from the scrap heap. The book talks about that. Because that's where I was. And we've got a vision where we're going to go into these institutions and these places, and we're going to show them the message, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're not just going to go in there and tell them what we do. We're going to educate them, and we're going to provide both the in facility meetings and support. And then what we're doing is we're setting up a couple of kind of like bridge meetings within our area that they can attend to kind of facilitate the online area as a whole. And then once they're ready, we're going to have like a buddy system where they will then be introduced to a sponsor and to the online area and all of the meetings that we have as a whole. And the way that we're setting it up is that we do have a meeting that focuses on step 12 and working with others, living by spiritual principles and working with others. We've got a dedicated WhatsApp group that is just for that, finding a sponsor, making yourself known as being a sponsor. Because it's not that we get to keep it by giving it away. We get to get it by giving it away. Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, whatever your fellowship is it's really sad. The message has been diluted. It's been watered down over the years. And our goal is to strip it right back to how they did it, the first 100, they went out and they found these people. They went to the hospitals. They went and got these people. That's what we're going to do. It's not about me today. Yeah, I do have to make a living. I do have to work. I've got to pay my bills. Got a couple of kids to feed and support. But I find that when I think more about what I can do for other people, that all of that other stuff falls into place. just like On Awakening tells me. I consider our plans for the day. So I think about what I need to do in the day. But ultimately, in that meditation in the morning that I do, I think about God's work, and I think about what I can do for everybody else. You know, because it's not about MJ anymore. It's not about what I want. You know, what I wanted never brought me any happiness. You know, but as a byproduct of making sure that I look after God's children, my fellow addicts, alcoholics, I get a pretty good life. It's also very important for me to go back to the book and at page 86 when I retire at night, you know, because I can't set myself up for the following day unless I retire at night. You know, and that step 11 nightly review is so important. So important. You know, because whilst I do practice step 10 regularly throughout the day, my step 11 review lets me look at the whole day, you know, and what does it say? It says on page 88, we are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly, as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. You know, the truth is that I relax and I take it easy today, guys. Right? And I'm not rushing around thinking about all of the things that I can do to serve me. And as a result of that, I am in less danger of excitement, because excitement for an addict like me is really dangerous. Right? And fear for me, my step 4 told me, is really bad. But, you know, anger, worry and self-pity or foolish decisions, I don't have to worry about any of that today. You know, and it all comes from that pause in step 10 and that step 11 practice of just being still. You know, not making rash decisions, constructively reviewing my day, it says. You know, and picking apart the day. One of my favourite questions is, have I been loving and kind to all? My answer is always no. Why? I'll give you an example. I might go into the shop to buy a vape, right? And I'll go in the shop, I'll say, oh, can I have a vape, please? And the lady will give me the vape. And I'll say, oh, thanks very much, you know. I'm saying thanks because I got what I wanted. Right? But what I should have been saying is thanks for coming to work today, right? To open this shop, to let me buy that vape, you know. Have you got any plans for today? You know, that's me being loving and kind, not just saying thanks because you've given me what I wanted. You know, I can always be more loving and kind. There's always more to be done. You know, my job's never done. What can I pack into the stream of life? I hope that answers your question, Karen.
Yeah, that is just what I needed to hear. I don't know about all of you guys, but it's like I had to take my self-paced exam for my master's this morning. I wanted to do my prayers. I wanted to wake my kids up. I wanted to go to the supermarket. I wanted to buy bagels because I had guests. And guess what I did? Because I got angry last night in my nighttime review. I just sat my butt down. I did put on some makeup, you know, fake it till you make it. I sat down, but when I put on my makeup, that started like a Rube Goldberg device, kind of like the meditation chair, which is good to hear that, because I was like, I need to park my rear end because it's about to run in 50 different directions simultaneously. And you know, the show doesn't go off so well when I start like that. When we start like that, because MJ's my sister, Hannah's my sister, Lisa, you know, we're all twinning. We're all, you know, we may have different presentations of this disease. You know what I did? I was like, I need to do some step work. I need to think about, I need to do some step work. I need to do a little bit of writing. And, that calmed my nervous system. I listened to a meeting. That was not on my to-do list of 75 things for this morning. And then I sat here, and then MJ started speaking. And I was like, I was going to go for a walk or go for a drive and have the meeting on. And I was like, no, sit down, and then I did that, and I realized, I'm really tired. I just got to connect to higher power. I just got to, put my hand in higher power. So, MJ spoke a lot about connecting her sponsees, putting their hand in higher power's hand. Well, you certainly did that for me today, and your story is so beautiful. And I'm sure all those who are seeing MJ live, we see a beautiful representation of when the addict straightens out spiritually, they straighten out physically and mentally as well. We see someone who's calm, keen, sharp, beautiful, put together, thought out, eloquent, and that sometimes gives even 10 tons more hope than a beautiful, inspiring verbal message. But seeing the magic of this program right in front of us, with this intelligent agent spearhead of God's everlasting creation. So thank you. Thank you personally. Thank you on behalf of everyone. Thank you on behalf of the hundreds who will listen to this on the recording. And I am going to ask you to choose the prayer that most connects to your heart, most speaks to you. So you can pray us out today into a beautiful recovered day. And if you're like me and have some amends to make, and a day where we'll go ahead and make those amends. And I love actually what you said about the vape, because it's like, I could say thank you, I could say please, I could have my guests over at 12, but it's like, how am I going to wake up my kids before the guests come? Am I going to be, a demolition ball, like to tear down those buildings? Well, what was the point in having guests then? Tear down my own kids, And, it's just like, okay. I love the meditation chair visual. I'm just on my recliner. Okay, God's will, not mine, be done. They'll either wake up or they won't wake up, and we'll just have to do the next right thing then, whatever God puts in mind. So thank you again, and please pray us out.
Oh, thanks ever so much, Karen. I'm going to take us out with the Thomas Merton prayer. Feel free to join in if you know the words. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself, and the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you, and I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, MJ.
Thanks,
Thank you
Karen.
all who
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you all who created this space to support this recovery message. We love you, and we wish you much success, and of course, a God is everything kind of day.